Episode number 10 was with Taking Back Sunday, but it was one of those episodes.
I was there.
The early on ones where Tara was there, but she was not with a microphone. So we had the opportunity to interview Shaun Cooper, who plays bass in Taking Back Sunday, and John Nolan, who plays guitar and keys and sings backups. And both John and Shaun were also in Stray Light Run at one point.
You'll hear all about it.
We're bringing it backwards with Taking Back Sunday.
Awesome.
It is. I'm hot.
I think it's all the lights.
Thank you.
I was just messing around. No, I think that one's okay. Whatever you guys think you need. But yeah, I feel like I'm fine.
Are you sure? Okay.
But yeah, I'm cozy. But yeah, I was messing with it in our dressing room. It's like 10 degrees cooler in the hall.
I'm going to sit on the floor if that's... is this weird?
Whatever you like,
okay.
no.
I think we're ready here. If you guys are ready to go.
Let's rock and roll.
You grew up in Long Island, both of you?
Yeah.
I was born in Baltimore, but I moved to Long Island by the time I was like 3. So
He's got some good memories, but not many, right?
yeah.
What about you, Shaun? Were you born there?
Yeah. I was born on Long Island, and John and I, we didn't know each other at all until the band, but we grew up in the same town, a town called Baldwin.
Okay.
Which is in Nassau County on Long Island. It's a nice suburban town. And we didn't meet until the band, but yeah, we both grew up there. And Mark, our drummer as well, grew up in Baldwin as well, and then he moved to fancy Rockville Center.
Oh, is that the nicer spot or bigger?
It's a little bit nicer. It's a little more upper mid class, than like straight up like blue collar mid class. Yeah, so that's kind of Mark and I played in bands from then. I think I was 7 years old the first time I went over his house, and I brought like this little Yamaha keyboard, he would just bang on the drums. I remember he had a big Metallica poster above his drums and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. Even though I was more a Guns N' Roses guy, Mark was more the Metallica guy.
Sure.
But we just make noise way back then, and it was so much fun. And 30 years later, we're still doing that.
Was that the first instrument you learned to play? Was the keyboard?
I wouldn't say I was playing it more than bashing on the keys and making sounds come out and having fun. The first instrument I took lessons on was, I think, I bought a guitar when I was about 8 years old. It was like my first communion and stuff. I had some money, so I went to the guitar store. I bought a guitar and an amp. It was like $150.
Nice.
And that was like all my money. And I got this little red guitar, and I took some lessons. But the guitar teacher was teaching me lots of folk songs, and I thought that was super boring. I was like, I want to play like Slash from Guns N' Roses. What is this? It's not like Red River Valley. I'm like, this is garbage. This is not fun. There's no distortion on this thing. This stinks. So I kind of put that down. I took up violin in school a little bit later, and then saxophone, and then bass by 6th grade.
Oh, wow. What about you, John? Because you can play numerous amounts of instruments as well. How did you get into music or start playing?
Around 15, I got my first guitar. It was kind of like random. I just remember there was like, in my church, there was people who played guitar, and they would do like the worship service where they had a full band, and I always thought like the guitar players were really cool, and I wanted to be like that when I grew up. So eventually I decided to actually try it, and my parents got me a guitar, and I got a videotape from Blockbuster Video about how to play chords.
Nice. Blockbuster coming through.
Yeah. I learned how to play Stand By Me, G, E minor, C, D, and decided to use those chords for half of the songs I would write for the rest of my life.
They work, man.
Yeah, they do. That's amazing. Well, when did you pick up playing piano?
We always had a piano in our house, and I would mess around with it. And it was probably a couple of years after I learned guitar. Once I realized like that you could play chords on the piano, it wasn't that hard to kind of just like translate what I knew about guitar and the songs that I knew the chords for to to piano. And then I just kind of kept playing. It just sort of, I was more focused on the guitar, but I would kind of always mess around with the piano, and eventually I got decent on it.
Now you intertwine them both as far as songwriting goes and performing and everything. And Shaun, so you so you went from bashing the keyboard, and then you started picking up other instruments. When did you land on the bass? Did you?
Yeah, I was 12. For my 12th birthday, I got a bass, and I started taking lessons and started getting really serious about it. And by the time I was that was like 6th grade. by 7th grade, I was able to join the jazz band. They hadn't had a real bass player in the jazz band, but I was like a real musician. I think a lot of people just played in bands, and no one really knew what the bass did. You had upright players and stuff, but they didn't they weren't interested in rock music or jazz music. They played with a bow and everything. So I went up to the teacher. I had played saxophone in the junior high band. And I said, hey, I'd really like to play bass for jazz band. I think that'd be really cool. He's like, oh, you can play? Like, can you read music? I was like, yeah, like I can read bass clef, treble clef. Like,
oh, wow.
Can we get in there? And then I joined that. And that was really cool because it was rough because you had to take an early morning bus to get there an hour before school started, and you'd play in jazz band. But the songs were really fun. So we did that the first year, and the songs were pretty simple. But one of my best friends, he's a guy named Isaac Berker. He was a fantastic guitar player the same age. And I met him kind of through our mutual friends, but then we grew close in jazz band. He realized he had a solid rhythm section, and then we started playing progressively harder jazz songs and stuff for the following year in 8th grade, and that was really awesome too. But I stopped kind of being more focused on getting really good at music and playing more rock music and writing songs and playing in bands with my friends. So I lost a little bit of focus, and I remember I'd come to practices and stuff. Like, I was really, really solid, but I just wouldn't practice the songs at home. I wouldn't learn them, and I remember one day I just totally blew it. And he's like, you guys are not practicing the songs. What's going on? And like, we were getting ready for a concert and stuff, like the big holiday concert.
Sure.
And I was like, geez, I got to buckle down. I got to change my ways a little bit and get more serious, or I'm going to make a fool of myself in front of like a couple hundred people.
Right.
Big holiday show.
Yeah, everyone's excited for that.
Yeah, poor Mr. Noto. He was so bummed.
He's probably stoked now.
I don't know. Yeah, I've kind of lost track of him, but I really liked him. He was a cool guy.
Growing up, you said you already knew Mark.
Yeah, like he was in the afternoon class in kindergarten, so I don't think I met him. It was half day, so I don't think I met him till like 1st grade.
Sure.
And then we'd just meet on the playground and had mutual friends and stuff, and that's where it all kicked off, yeah.
And then did you meet John? Did you guys both go to the same school together, or how did you guys
No, we
link up?
did not. I went to a small Christian school in another town, so we were never in the same school at the same time.
Okay.
I actually didn't meet Shaun until he joined the band.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, maybe
You
might
had
have
met
been
me
around
in
with
passing,
Mark.
going
Yeah,
to
'cause they
shows.
were-
Taking Back Sunday had a different original singer, and I would go to the shows just to hang out with Mark and watch his band play.
Because Mark was already drumming for him? Okay. Adam was in the band, but he moved over?
Yeah, Adam
Yeah,
played
he was
bass
playing
initially.
bass.
And then you took his spot, and he just went to singing?
Yeah. And this is actually a funny piece of trivia. Before Adam had moved up, I was kind of a mess. Mark and I had played in bands together, and we were playing in this one band, but I wouldn't like show up to practice. I was totally flaky and just kind of sitting in my room staring at the walls, having tough like teenage years and stuff. So he's like, hey, I'm playing with this band. I think there's some potential. And I was like, hey, can you get me a tryout? And Mark goes, no. I'm not going to get you a tryout. You're not even showing up to this other band practice. So these guys take everything like really seriously, and they don't miss a practice. They don't miss a show. You're not ready for this. I was like, oh, come on, man. That's not cool. But he was absolutely right, because I couldn't have hacked it back then. So he started to feel guilty, and he called Eddie up, our old guitar player, and was like, hey, can I get my friend to try it? He's like, yo, no, we have this kid giving up his whole life in North Carolina to come up and join this band. Like, we can't try out your friend. Like, it's too late. Like, he's literally driving right now.
Wow.
Like, your friend is out. I'm sorry, man. And I was like, oh, man, that's a bummer. And then I started to know there was some trouble with the original singer, Antonio. And Mark was like, dude, I think I can get you in now. I think I can get you in. Like, I'd started showing up for our other bands, practicing being more consistent and just getting better. And then he's like, dude, it happened. It happened. Adam's going to be singing. Because Adam was always such a crazy, wild bass player, like how he is on stage now, singing, tossing the microphone. He was doing that with a bass guitar in his hand. It was crazy. And he was the guy you were watching. So it didn't make any sense for him to be playing bass, too. So when I knew that was going to happen, I was like, geez, he would be a great front man. And with he and John writing the lyrics, like, this can really go somewhere. So I got my tryout then, and it was great from then on. We knew everything kind of lined up, and had any of those little pieces changed, we wouldn't be sitting here all these years later talking right now. So it's very, very fortunate.
That's crazy.
The way fate works.
Yeah, for sure. And then, John, so you were writing in the very early processes or early stages of Taking Back Sunday. You were writing the songs then with Adam, or how when did you start writing music?
Well, as soon as I started playing guitar, I started writing songs. That was kind of just came very natural to me. And so when I joined Taking Back Sunday, we had a different singer, and he wrote all the lyrics and melodies. And but I would write. The band would write together and work on the music together. So I would write, in that way. But I was always writing songs on my own, separate from the band. When Antonio was singing,
Sure.
and so when he left, that was when Adam and I took over the lyrical part of the writing. Yeah.
At this point, Adam's singing. You're still playing guitar, singing backups, and then Shaun, you join the band.
Yep.
And you start playing some shows. Where were your first shows at then? Were they like around
Mary Ann's living room.
That
was the first show I played. It was New Year's Eve, 2000,
Yeah,
going
the
into
house
2001.
party.
Yeah, literal house party. Like set up right in the living room, right in front of the TV, on the rug.
Yeah.
The room was probably not much bigger than this.
Wow.
But we played. There was a lot of places on Long Island. We were pretty fortunate that there was like a good scene there. A lot of bands, a lot of venues for like young bands to play. So we would pretty much play different venues on Long Island. I'd say every weekend for a while.
There was a club called Ground Zero. Didn't we play at the Funky Fish?
You think?
There
Yeah.
was a
we
place
did.
called Backstreet Blues in Rockville Center. Yeah, so there were multiple places to play, and yeah, it was a very cool kind of scene. And we like when we finally made it to New York City, that always felt huge. We played this
Sure.
club called Brownies, which was kind of legendary back then.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Where else? We played, I think, a place called Fat Cat Billiards. It was a pool hall.
In New York City.
Yeah.
That's
It was
right.
downtown
Yeah.
somewhere, and like that, it felt like you were really making it. And then we'd play. We had some friends in the area, friendly with the Thursday guys, friendly with different bands. So we'd make it to New Jersey. We started branching
Yeah,
out
and
slowly but
Connecticut,
surely. Yeah,
gradually.
Connecticut. We played a lot.
And that was all prior
The
to
Hawk's Nest, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Is that Hartford?
I think so.
But
It was out of college. I don't
Yeah.
remember what college.
And how old were you guys at this point? Had you been signed and all that yet,
No.
or no?
No, this was
just
before we were.
This was just grinding out and playing.
Yeah, we had done a 5-song demo and it had 4 songs that would end up on Tell All Your Friends, and so we were just selling our demo and trying to get a name for ourselves.
we were all burning them on our home computers. You could do that at the
Yeah.
time, which was really innovative technology. You didn't have to go to like a pressing plant,
Sure.
or spend a ton of money that you didn't have. So we just buy bundles of CDs. We got like the big bulk 100 thing from like Micro Center or Best Buy or whatever, and we just burn them all day long. Like I'd sit in bed watching TV, and I'd hop out of bed, put it in another disc, and then we'd sell them at the show later that night.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then, so you guys were playing shows just up kind of around where you guys grew up. But as far as like New York, Connecticut, that's all. I'm from the West Coast, so I don't know. Is that all pretty close by?
Yeah, it's all drive and go home that
All
night, or
within
crash
probably-
on a dorm room floor or something. Yeah, a
I'd
couple
say
hour drive.
within 2 to 3 hours of Long Island.
But yeah,
Okay.
summer of 2001, we booked our first like full tour, which was a dubious
It was
idea.
a very
but
silly idea.
Yeah,
we
it
had
made
no
no sense.
following.
Did you have
Outs-
a record label at that
No,
time?
we had
We
Okay.
didn't have a booking agent,
we
and we had no following outside of our immediate surroundings. But we met up with a band called North Star, who was from Alabama.
yeah. So their guitar player Tyler and Adam would just call different places along the East Coast and book shows.
Wow.
Yeah, and we didn't have any money or any places to stay. Literally, the first night, I think we were in Richmond, Virginia. Adam was just like, hey, does anyone have a place we could stay? There were like 10 people in the crowd, and some girl was like, yeah, you can come to my place. So we just all posted up at her apartment, all slept on the floor, and then went on to the next city, did it again.
That's
And
so cool.
We
That's
literally
amazing.
played to probably 50 people on the entire 2-week tour.
A lot of the shows fell through. We had, I remember, like 3 days, and we just stayed.
We were
in
in
one
Aiken,
city.
Aiken, South Carolina.
Did we stay at Adam's friend's house?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something?
His friend Chris. We just
Yeah.
crashed on his floor, and like we went to the supermarket and bought pasta for he and his girlfriend. Who's like, "Hey, thank you. This is how we can repay you with like 50 pounds of pasta because that's all we can afford." And yeah, we just slept there and watched like the same movies and went to the mall. Like it was the best of times and the worst of times. So many vivid memories from that tour. But we played like Biloxi, Mississippi, and the last show was in New Orleans, and then we went back to Adam's dad's house in I think he was in High Point, North Carolina at the time.
Okay.
We crashed there, licking our wounds. Like, man, we did something.
Yeah.
So I think if nothing else, it made no sense for our career, but it did bond us together, and I think that was an important part of the journey and the beginning. And it also showed record labels that, hey, we are driven to do
committed.
stuff.
Sure.
We're not very smart, but man, we are blindly driven to do things with
Yeah,
this band.
we're taking it seriously. And,
Yeah, we believed in it.
And you believed in the band. And when you guys got signed and started recording to all your friends, how did that process? Were were labels approaching you? Like,
No.
how'd you initially get signed?
We got signed. We had a friend who took pictures for the band, and she somehow knew someone who worked at Victory Records, and they were driving together, and she was listening to it, and he was interested.
Yeah, he was the A&R guy, and wore many other hats at Victor's.
Yeah.
Name was Angel Warbe, and he's still a friend to this day. And he just was, this band is great. Are they signed? We're like, what's their deal? So he's like, let me talk to Tony at Victory. And then suddenly, I remember, I'll never forget this. I was sitting at home one day, and I get a call from Adam. He's like, dude, I just got off the phone with Tony from Victory Records. He wants to sign us. I was like, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
No way. This is crazy, because we had like limited interest from Drive Thru, limited interest from Triple Crown, like all these people who had very brief chats with, and they're like, yeah, okay, you keep doing your thing, and so all these like little glimmers of hope never amounted to anything. But then Tony made moves. Next thing we know, we have contracts coming in. Like, we're getting email stuff. We're like, this is crazy. This guy really wants us, and no one else cares. And it was pretty quick moving from there.
That must have been like a pretty surreal experience, I would assume. Like, you've been grinding it out, and then this label's like, hey, we're gonna fully back you, and like,
that was like literally a dream come true for all of us. It was what we had always wanted, and it was kind of surreal that it was actually happening.
Yeah, and then from there, you guys, you recorded to all your friends, and then you toured on that record. Was that your first like real big, fully supported tour? Or?
Yeah, I think that after that was the first time we toured like with a booking agent, and weren't booking things ourselves. And
We got into the studios probably November, December.
Yeah.
Maybe it's October through December of 2001. And we got the record done. I remember Adam got sick towards the end when the vocals were being done, so that was like a
We had
pretty
to
stressful
redo
time. Like,
some
oh my
things, I
gosh,
think.
his voice we need his voice back. We need to get him in there. Like, there's so much money at stake, and it was a very minuscule budget.
10,000, I think.
Yeah. That was like the
That label was putting it up, or
budget. Yeah. But
Big money.
and that was, the money was all gone by the time that the record was done, because all the time spent in the studio. But we never worked in a real studio and stuff. That was a really cool experience. We were at a studio called Big Blue Meanie in Jersey City, New Jersey. It's like an hour drive from where I grew up. So that was pretty rad too. It was like big, real studio. This is what we do. This is so crazy.
And John, you even brought your sister onto that record. And she sang.
She
like,
did. She
vocals
sang
on a couple, at least 2 or 3
2
songs.
songs.
So was that you guys were fairly young when you signed to Victory, right?
Yeah, I
had just turned 21.
Yeah, and I was probably 23 or maybe 24.
And were your
I can't remember
how
exactly.
did your parents like fully support the whole thing? Like at that point, do you remember?
After I got off the phone with Adam with that conversation about Tony, I was like, oh, you got to watch out for these label guys. I was like, listen, nothing is going on in my life right now. This is like the best opportunity. We're going to take it no matter what happens, and it will be better than what I'm doing now. And I was absolutely right. But they were definitely very supportive, because they knew I was at a young enough age where I could still go back to school and figure out what the next step was. And, and you only really get one shot at it.
Yeah.
It seems, and yeah, my parents were very great about it.
How about you, John? Was similar?
Yeah, my parents were very supportive, but I think they didn't really expect me to make a career out of it.
I mean,
think.
I didn't expect us to make a career out of it. How could anyone else? Like, oh, this is a fun little diversion from the path.
Yeah, so and then even after we got signed and things started happening, it took a while before they realized, that it was meaningful and like, because, Victory Records doesn't mean anything to my parents,
Right.
Like,
It wasn't like some major labels coming to
and then
fly you around or whatever.
Yeah, we'd even got on the cover of Alternative Press and because that's not in stores that they would go to or
it's a magazine for teenagers.
Yeah, they don't know
in
anything
their
about
50s.
it. But then we'd be in the local newspaper. And then my family would freak out, but it would be so much smaller of a deal than being on the cover of Alternative Press.
Literally only in our town of Baldwin, distributed for free, versus the national magazine on shelves, full color, 5-page spread. Oh, who cares? It's all about your awareness, man.
Yeah,
It's so funny. So yeah, I mean, I remember I've seen you guys so many times growing up, and I've been a fan of your band. I was way into punk rock and Green Day and Rancid and all those bands.
Yeah.
And then the first time I heard "Tell All Your Friends," I was like, "Oh my god! This is so much different than anything that I had ever heard in my whole life." And
Thanks, man.
for that record, or just speaking on that album, what were your inspirations for that record?
yeah. I think everybody brought their own kind of inspirations into it. For me, I think a lot of it was a lot of that 90s emo stuff, Promise Ring, Get
Sure.
Up Kids, and
Lifetimes.
yeah. And I wasn't that into Lifetime. Adam was actually really into Lifetime.
Oh, okay.
That was one of his big ones at
Yeah.
that point. And mine was a little more like that, Modest Mouse, the kind of that noisy,
Yeah.
I don't know, indie emo,
Sure.
or something.
Yeah,
I don't know what you'd call it.
Yeah,
But that's where I was coming from. And then I think Shaun and Mark were a little more punk rock influenced.
Sure, yeah,
probably.
definitely Rancid was big, but the pop sensibility of bands like Screeching Weasel and the Queers
Oh,
were very,
I
very
love
big.
them,
That's why we identified with what John and Adam were doing lyrically and melodically with their vocals. All that catchy stuff really connected. There were so many times oh, that's so great. The She Says Come On, Come On and Great Romance. I remember the first time we played at a practice space and they had just taken over the writing of the lyrics and those melodies. It's oh, I got goosebumps the first time we played.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that had ever really happened of all these years playing in bands. So that pop sensibility was big. But I'm doing a lot of stuff where I outline chords, which was influenced by this guy, Victor Wooten, who's a ridiculous bass player. It's nothing that... I kind of translated it my way into the punk rock realm from this wild, jazz virtuoso, proggy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was learning how to play all this crazy open hammer plucking, finger tapping, slap stuff, which never worked for music that I really loved and connected with, but I thought it was a fascinating world. So definitely there's some of that bass playing. But Mark was really big into hip hop as well, so I think that was an element that he brought to the band that kind of set us apart from a lot of different bands that were maybe in a more of a pop punk realm solely.
Do you have inspiration or any advice for kids nowadays that are starting out?
I mean, I think the blind belief in yourself. There were so many times when the band was getting started that logically it made no sense to me. I was I don't know anyone who makes a living from this. I don't know anyone who supports their family who does anything in the music world. This is crazy. But I believe in us. I believe in this group of guys. I believe in these songs. So I'm going to follow it as long as it will let me, and I'll follow this path and we'll see what happens and we'll figure it out later if it doesn't work out. But just having that blind faith, I think, was really, really good in being able to persevere through the hard times and get to this next stage, to the next stage, to the next stage. And here we are all these years later. And that was such a big part of it. But if I couldn't rely on the guys that were in the band, it wouldn't have worked. So I think that made it easy for me to believe in what we were doing. I'm I know all these guys want it just as bad as I do.
Right.
So I think that is the hardest thing to come by, to have a whole group of people that are set with a singular motivation.
And you guys all had the same goal and game. There.
Yeah.
Same for you, John. Like, do you have any inspiration or advice?
I kind of always say that I think your motivation has to be just like a love for making music and playing music. So I think if you're trying to get into this for money or popularity or any number of other reasons, girls, yeah.
drugs,
yeah,
because we've seen them all come and go.
Yeah, it's not going to work out in the end because there's a lot, like even now, even at the level we're at, there's a lot of things that are very difficult about this, and there's always a lot of reasons that you could stop doing it, and
sure.
And I think unless your motivation is just about your love for music, it's and just the enjoyment of doing it, I don't think it's going to last.